Guys, gals, and pals, welcome back to Paint and Talk episode 27. As always, I hope you've had an amazing 24 hours since the last time I've seen you. I myself have been doing pretty well, and today I want to talk about a topic that, I've wanted to talk about since I started Paint and Talk. It's one of those topics I've always had a ton of thoughts on, but never really had somewhere to say those thoughts, And that topic is self-improvement and the self-improvement space. I think two things I should state right off the bat here, just as to not misconstrue any of what I'm saying. The second that you start talking about self-improvement, I feel like the response that I see people have a lot is like, so you're saying people working on their, trying to better themselves is bad, or you're trying to say that people should just like get complacent. No, not at all. I am totally against that. And I will right off the bat say improving yourself is an objectively good thing, right? The two main things that I see self-improvement recommending are things like going to the gym and reading. Those are the two main ones that I see them saying all the time that people should do. Those are two great things. I myself, I read every day, and I make sure to be physically active every single day too, whether that's running or going to the gym. I think if you're here, maybe you clicked on this video because you're thinking of doing some self-improvement stuff and you don't know if you should, maybe, do it, 100%. Run, read, go to the gym, get off your phone as much as you can. All these things are good things. I'm not here to critique the ideology of self-improvement in terms of like, you shouldn't improve. I think that'd be a dumb video. Also, even if there's a case to be made for that, what do I gain from sitting here being like, you shouldn't do these things that are good? No, I don't want to talk about that at all. I want to talk about the messaging behind self-improvement and how it's treated kind of from a larger scale, because as much as I don't have any issues with self-improvement as a concept or the idea of improving yourself, I have a whole lot of issues with the space of self-improvement. And that is more so what I want to talk about. I think the second thing that I want to say here too as we start off is, in this video, I will probably get kind of passionate about this. This is something I've had a lot of thoughts about. No matter how I come across here, no, I'm open to other positions on this. I've had long discussions with this with friends and people who are more into that kind of space. And, I will always keep an open mind, even if I don't seem like I am, you know what I mean? If I'm discussing this in a format where I don't have anyone to challenge me, so I think it's very easy to come across as though like, I think I have the truth about what's going on. I don't think that at all. I would 100% be open and want to hear other people's thoughts on this. So, with that being said, my problem with self-improvement is kind of the promise that it gives people. Because we're taught that there is a crisis in young men a lot of the time is where I see this a lot. Or just like young people in general. We're taught there's this huge crisis of like, they're lazy, they don't want to work, they've been abandoned by society, and I think there are elements of truth to a lot of these claims. If you are a young person who is in your 20s right now, maybe your late teens, you're coming into the world knowing like, I'm about to exit the schooling system, go into the real world, you do have lower chances of buying a house. You do have lower chances of raising a family and achieving that American dream and having job security and being able to pay off your college debt. All these things are 100% true. My problem with self-improvement's answer to this is it pitches this idea that we can kind of work our way out of these things on an individual scale. I think my main issue with self-improvement is kind of like my issue with objectivism and Ayn Rand's philosophy, and that's that self-improvement inherently pitches an ideology of like extreme, rigid individualism. If you don't know, Ayn Rand is this philosopher who says that she has this idea of objectivism, that like basically if every part of the individual looks out for themselves in the most part and just focuses on themselves and what's best for them, kind of survival of the fittest type thing, the collective, the whole world would be better because everyone's working as hard as possible on themselves. This is a dumb philosophy. I don't like this philosophy at all because I think that it inherently promotes a lack of empathy. Two things can be true. It's good to work on yourself and people should put their all into living a good life. You know what I mean? You should work on yourself, totally. I do it all the time, every day, right? But it's also okay to recognize that, like, no, you got to look out for your fellow person, or, you know, because you are in a lot of the times I feel like this is a privileged thing too, of like, just because you are in a position and have the privilege to go to the gym and read books every day does not mean that other people do. You know what I mean? And there's a whole world out there, and their issues a lot larger than you know, a crisis in work ethic, or masculinity is the big one. I don't even want to get into that because I think that's just I feel like most people even recognize that's a little silly at this point. But I think it's important to say that like, you know, you cannot self-improve your way out of the ills of the world, you know? And I think that, I would say that I think there's kind of a, like, almost, I don't want to say it's a conspiracy, but I think a lot of the people pushing these self-improvement ideals have a lot more to gain from convincing us that we are the problems and not society, than if, you know, we all recognize that, like, no, I should work out, I should go to the gym, I should improve myself, but like, you still are doing this thing that, you know, there are still problems that I should work on a larger scale too. You know what I mean? And I feel like what happens a lot of the time, what I've seen happen, and people very close to me, unfortunately, is like, people, they do all the right things, right? They follow the steps, they self-improve, they do all that, right? And then they realize that, like, their problems still exist. Maybe they're still depressed. Maybe they still can't afford anything, you know? Maybe they still can't find a girlfriend, or, you know, whatever it ends up being. And they kind of get this, like half resentment, half entitlement of like, oh, but why, like, I did all the right things. Like, it must be because I am so good and everyone else is just like, doesn't get it. I must be in on some hidden secret. You know what I mean? They get this weird sense of entitlement about it. And I don't think it's healthy. You know what I mean? I think there are healthier ways to promote this message of like, we all should work on ourselves. You have all the information in the world at your fingertips. Use it to be the best version of yourself. But there's still a lot we got to work on together. You know what I mean? Don't abandon I feel like saying we need to self-improve in this regard is like almost like you should put yourself above everyone else. And I think that can be good sometimes. Sometimes you do need to focus on yourself. But to think that that's the solution to the problem, whatever that problem might be, is usually not correct, you know? I know that I see this happen a lot with, I'm kind of generalizing here for sure, but I've seen it in my personal life with a lot of guys, so I'm going to say a lot of guys. When it comes to like romance, getting a girlfriend, they're like, oh, I need to look better. They kind of get into that space of like I need to make my looks better. And there's an element of truth, yeah, for sure. Like, if you're a better looking person, you're going to have better dating opportunities, just opportunities in life in general. Like, good looking people get farther a lot of the time. We all know this. It's called like pretty privilege, whatever that thing is, right? But I've seen so many people, like, they'll do all the right things, they'll get fit, they'll be 10 times better looking than they were a year ago, and then they still can't find anyone who likes them because it was just them. You know what I mean? It was just, sometimes it really is just, you gotta work with what you got, and you don't need to have this grand sort of, you don't need to be on this grand mission to be happy, you know? And I think that's another element of it too that I think is really interesting. So a lot of self-improvement guys, they'll talk about like reading and philosophy and stuff, and it's always stoicism. It's always 100% of the time Stoic philosophy. Epictetus is a big one. Meditations is like the biggest one, I'd say. And there's a video on this actually somewhere that was very good, if you can find it. But it was called like Broicism, how this self-improvement space has kind of, in a way, like almost co-opted and rewritten a lot of Stoicism to make it seem like it's a self-improvement philosophy when it's very much not. The Stoics would say, if you have a lot of issues in your life, what you should do is you should work to be satisfied with how you are right now. You know, like work, basically what I just kind of said of like, work with what you got. That's more so what the Stoics would say than like, you got to improve out of here. Actually, I think it's interesting, kind of a sidebar, the philosophy in a lot of self-improvement spaces is way closer to what Nietzsche says about the Stoics than the actual Stoics. Nietzsche has this take that like the Stoics are really dumb and weak because saying you should be satisfied with the way things are, saying that you should be okay with moving with the tides of change is a weak man's response to not being stronger. Now, if you believe that, that's valid. If you like Nietzsche's interpretation of that, I'm not going to argue, Nietzsche said it, not me. And I also would say there's a big difference between the 20-year-old who thinks they're really cool because they go to the gym a lot and Friedrich Nietzsche critiquing Stoic philosophy. But, sidebar over, this idea of like Stoicism as a philosophy of improvement is partially true. I mean, I guess I don't think, from what I've read of the Stoic stuff, I kind of doubt that Marcus Aurelius would be against going to the gym and improving yourself. I do. But the interesting thing about it is like, a lot of this self-improvement has a very wealth-worshipping tendency to it, right? Which is almost like, I don't know if the word contradictory is right, but it almost makes an oxymoron to say, to be following a Stoic philosophy and be so into all this, wealth stuff, because I feel like a lot of the end goal of the self-improvement is this idea of like, you need to rise above it all. Again, it's like an Ayn Randian thing. I've heard self-improvement guys tell me that they want to become the Übermensch, which is Nietzsche's idea of like the perfect man. Also, a little bit of a red flag if you know some of the connotations of that too. I don't think this person meant it like that, or at least I really hope not. But, this idea of like you need to rise above is also inherently against Stoicism, because it's saying like you need to work hard to outwork every single circumstance that will come your way. You need to be better than the rest of the world around you, when the Stoics would say you should accept the world around you. You should learn to be satisfied. Stoicism's a lot closer to any sort of Buddhism than it is, self-improvement. Which is why I think that its strange adoption by these spaces is really puzzling. I mean, that's the tricky thing about philosophy, too, isn't it? That, like, it's oftentimes written so vaguely that any guy can grab it and come up with whatever they want from it. I will be honest in saying that, like, that's one of the problems of the trade. I mean, look at what happened to Nietzsche's work in 1930s Germany. Definitely, I would say he got misinterpreted pretty heavily there, when the Nazis took his stuff and then rewrote it. But, this is the newest large-scale trend that I'm seeing happening, where Nietzsche's ideas, not Nietzsche's, sorry, the Stoics' ideas are being just completely rewritten, for lack of a better word, to fit this philosophy. But let's say you're in the self-improvement space and you hear that, you see that the Stoics' ideas are not exactly in line, and you go, okay, whatever, I'm not a Stoic. I just, am into this stuff anyways. And I think that's great. I do think, as I've basically prefaced for half this episode now, if you are somebody who's just like, I am in this space and I don't really care if anyone else is. I think it's just like, I like doing this stuff. I don't think it's gonna fix the world. That's fine. But the underlying message of not the whole, not the ideas themselves of improving, those are good, as I keep saying, just the space itself of like everyone needs to improve their way out of their circumstances. I think that is still inherently bad, whether you call it Stoicism or not. At its core, I would say like most accurately, it's Randian. Back to what I was saying about like, it's just based off this idea that like if everyone just is out for themselves and improves, the whole will be better. There's also evidence to support this in the fact that a lot of it ends up being like sort of a pyramid scheme. I know a lot of guys who fell into the self-improvement space and are now just making money by doing self-improvement content. And listen, if you want to make that content, that's great. I have no qualms. Everyone should do their own thing. I'm always open to that. That's weird though, right? That like everyone, I without fail have seen a lot of this cycle happening of like, oh, I'm working on myself, I'm working on myself, I'm working on myself. Now I'm teaching other people to work on themselves. And usually all they have to show is like maybe a new haircut, a little better in shape, and they've read like 3 books, My other recommendation here, if I'm trying to give some like practical thoughts too, some more practical advice, is that I am mostly against reading self-improvement as a genre. I think if you read a self-improvement book or two, that's great. You know, if you hear about a book from a friend that you want to read, that's awesome, and go read it, you know, and if it helps you, that's awesome. I find, though, this strange trend where a lot of people will read a self-improvement book and be like, oh my god, I figured it out, this is what I'm going to keep reading. And they keep reading self-improvement book after self-improvement book, and it's almost like running on a treadmill thinking you're getting somewhere, you know? Maybe you're learning to read a little bit more, but I think after the first couple self-improvement books, you know, it's time to move on. I know for me, that book was Atomic Habits. I read Atomic Habits when I was in, I want to say high school. I read it. A teacher recommended it to me. He read it when it first came out and all that, and it was great. It's a great book. And if anyone's looking, if you're here knowing like you like self-improvement and you're looking for very practical advice, Atomic Habits, great book, highly recommend. But after that, I kind of realized, like, okay, if I keep reading book after book, you know, all I'm going to get is a bunch of knowledge that I'm not actually putting to use. So I think it's much more useful to build those habits of like self-improving in a certain direction. You know what I mean? Like, you can self-improve and be like, I'm not just going to endlessly work on myself, because that's a kind of a vain activity after a while. Oftentimes a little self-serving too, I feel. And I want to eventually get to a place where I can be, you know, maybe your end goal is starting a business, which is awesome. If you want to do that, that's great, totally. And, you know, maybe you could switch to business books. That's like a big recommendation I have for people that are looking to get into that sort of thing, is like read a self-improvement book, yeah, but like don't keep reading self-improvement books, because all that's going to get you is running in circles. Switch to whether the genre is business. You know, listen, I definitely understand. I'm a guy that reads like philosophy books. That's not everyone's cup of tea. And if that's not your cup of tea, great. You don't have to do it. But I would personally say even just reading like fiction is more productive than reading self-improvement books. You know, it makes no sense. I feel like reading self-improvement books over and over again is almost the same as watching like, you know, just YouTube reels about self-improving. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same. It feels more productive because you're reading, yes, but it's the same thing as just like doing a lot of thinking and not a lot of doing, you know? So I think another big thing I have with this is like this idea of improvement for improvement's sake. A lot of the times people do this, they get into this space because they do genuinely need just a little bit of guidance. They need to just like get their life a little on track, and they're in and out. I think there's a study actually that people are in and out of the space usually relatively fast. But some people definitely fall in for longer. I've met people who have been there for years and years, and it's like they're focused on self-improving and still like, I'm gonna get to this next level. And it's like, what is the sake of improvement for improvement's sake? You know what I mean? Like, once you get more in shape, once you're a little happier, maybe what you need is to get off your phone and get outside more. You need to socialize. Maybe what you needed, I know that was, by the way, definitely a thing for me, is like I was coming out of COVID and I needed to socialize and do stuff like that. And I wouldn't say I was ever in the self-improvement space, but I definitely started working out and reading and doing all these things and getting more social. And those are definitely things people in the self-improvement space recommend. You know, they tend to do. I have a little paint on my finger. And I think that, like, that is great. And again, I feel like I've prefaced this a million times. If you're someone doing that, that's awesome. But I still kind of have questions about, like, what is this? What's the point of improving for improvement's sake? And I personally think there just is none. Like, I don't see, you know, if you want to, I think building habits out of these is great. But if your main goal in life is just improving yourself, it's like, why? Do you just want to die being like, I'm the best person ever at this thing? Which that's cool if you do, but if that thing is just like, I'm the best person ever at improving myself, it's like, okay, but like, to what end, you know? Do you have some bigger goal? Do you want to, a lot of people that I've met have the goal of just like, I want to just find a family and settle down. That's great too, but you need something else besides just self-improving. And if you're someone right now who's like watching this maybe and been in that zone for a little while and like kind of feeling like I don't really get what's going on here, that's what I would say is like, you need a bigger goal. You need something else to do alongside that, because improvement for improvement's sake is always going to be a very, you can go forever. If my goal in life is to be a self-improver and I keep going to the gym and I keep doing all these things, that will just last forever and nothing will change. I can read 1,000,000 books. If I read them without a purpose in mind, like, you're gonna be in the same place. And that's why you gotta find that purpose, you know what I mean? And that takes a lot of time. I'm not gonna sit here and act like that's like an easy thing to do. And I quite frankly have no advice for how to do it even. But it needs to happen, because if you endlessly try to improve with no purpose in mind, you're just gonna, it's almost like the analogy I was using before of reading just self-improvement books exclusively is like running on a treadmill and not getting anywhere. You're running in circles. Improving for your whole life is more or less the same thing, I would argue, because you're kind of just, you're gonna end up going in circles after a while, you know? You're gonna be like, okay, I improved in this zone, I improved in that zone. And it's like, how many stats can you max out in this video game before you understand that the goal is to go fight the dragon at the end of the game? And that's how I feel about the space a lot of the time. Is that I think the reason that I'm so passionate about it is because, like, as you guys can see from this, what you've been watching, I'm not wholly against this. You know what I mean? I think it's great that people are doing something like this. I'm against the idea of people, I'm more so against like the space itself than the actual ideas there. And I think one of the reasons is because of the way that it does exploit people when they're at their worst. You know what I mean? I know a lot of people that have dove into that after breakups or after, even after deaths in the family. And they're like, my life sucks and the only way to improve it is by listening to this other person. And that other person's always profiting. And that's why it's like, it feels very parasitic to me, you know? These guys, they have self-improvement communities. I mean, there's that one guy, Hamza, right? Who I think he did some insane stuff. I'm not really fully caught up on that. He has that school, the Adonis school. I saw so many ads for that, right? And like, it's like you join these Discord servers to sit around with other guys discussing how much your life sucks and how you need to like work to make it better. And it's like, but like, if you want to call it a support group, that's great, but it's not, because you're telling yourself that you're gonna rise above it. You know what I mean? It's almost just a way for like and I'm not anti-masculinity. I'm not gonna like sit here and be like, it's toxic masculinity. It's almost just like the dumbest form of masculinity though, right? Like it's not even like men in the wars accepted their issues more than that. At least they'd go like, I'm shell-shocked. You know what I mean? Like, even if they didn't want to call it PTSD, they would accept their issues a little bit more than sitting there going like, oh man, like, I just gotta keep going to the gym and all my problems are gonna get better. And it's like, maybe you have depression. Have you ever thought about that you're just depressed? Like, that you need psychiatric evaluation? Or that you're like, I've met people that are just full-fledged narcissists who are like, no, I'm improving. Like, they've said, like, I'm improving past points that you could ever imagine. And it's like, why? Like, so where are you now? You just spent 4 years of your life going to the gym, reading, and you have the same exact issues. You're in the same exact spot. You have nothing. You have nothing more than what you had, except for a little bit of nice progress in terms of yourself, but a lot of inflation in your own ego. And it's like, you need to understand that like there's huge issues, and some of them are affecting you and you're feeling them. Other ones are very personal and small issues that are also affecting you, and you need to learn how to overcome them in a healthy way, not trying to outwork and outpace your own sadness, you know? And that's where this grind culture is so dumb, because I've seen so many videos where it's like people are like, oh my God, I wake up at this time every day. I read a book by like this billionaire who wrote a book on how they got their success. And like, they have this strange perspective on the world that's not even strange, honestly. It's kind of what we're taught to believe, right? And it's what should be true. is that like if I work hard enough, I'll be the best. And that's strangely not how that works, right? Like, working hard enough does not make you the best. The guys at the top don't work, take someone like Elon Musk, who I don't even want to mention right now because of a lot of the things going on with that guy, but he is the richest man on earth. I can guarantee you, not putting in more hours than the average person who's trying to make rent, working 3 minimum wage jobs at once. They are putting in way more labor than him. And I will not hear a single argument otherwise. They 100% are. They're putting in more work. The only difference is that one, Elon has the money to buy more. The thing with money that's weird is they always say like it's easy to make your first million. And the reason that's true is because once you make money, it's so much easier to make more money and more money and more money, right? Which is why we're in the system we're in. If you like that, that's great. No qualms. But you do need to recognize that like that means that the guy at the top is going to be working 1,000,000 times less than the guy at the bottom. Working harder will not get you anywhere. And that's why I find that this culture of like, I just need to outwork these circumstances, I just need to, grind, it's not gonna work. It's gonna be it's not good, it's not good at all. And that's probably, I think that's what my biggest problem comes down to, is like, the self-improvement space is strangely making people ignore the real problems going on in favor, and I guess maybe it's an idealism, right? Because like, I want to sit here and be like, no, I can totally, like, the problems of me being depressed, the problems of me being sad, or not being able to afford rent next month, those are problems of my own issue. Like, I want to believe that so much more than like, no, these are very complicated issues that take a lot to address, I guess it's kind of an idealistic thing, right? That your issues are your own and not everyone else's too. Because when they're your own, that means you have the power to do something about them. So I guess it's a little sad in that sense almost, right? Because there's that whole thing of this is Jordan Peterson, who is in my opinion, just like not every person that I've talked to that is a legitimate like voice in the fields of psychology or philosophy will tell you the same thing about Jordan Peterson. That man is not a doctor. Like, I know he has a doctorate, and I gotta give it to him. Early in his career, he did some very legitimate, good work surrounding Nietzsche, Jung. Like, he had some things to say about those people, for sure. Once you get to, like, the stuff he's doing, like, on the internet, though, that man's not a real philosopher. And, like, everyone I've met, I've talked to professors about this, I've talked to people who are studying about this, I've talked to people who have, like, been in the fields for a long, long time. They're like, he has nothing to say. Because like, his whole thing is like, oh, you're depressed, make your bed. You're sad, make your bed. And the strange thing is, right, so for some people that is the answer. You're just not actually depressed if making your bed will make you happy. But like, it's always pushing this philosophy that is kind of just, I don't know, I don't want to say this because I never actually read through bulk of Peterson's work. I've watched a lot of synopsis and I've listened to 2 of his audiobooks, but I've never read in bulk the book, so I don't want to make statements about him that I can't 100% say are true, but like, it's almost like a repackaged Randian philosophy, right? Of like, do what's best for you and you'll be happy and everyone else will too. And that's so weird to me. That's so weird. Because like, how could you look at the problems going on and be like, no, there's no one causing these problems. All the systems are perfect. Everything in this world is exactly as it should be. Every single person is just an idiot and dumb and stupid. That's why they can't be happy. How? Like, how does that make sense? How is that even a productive thing to think? Like, that's not true. And once again, I'll come back to the statement, 2 things can be true. You can say that, people could be more productive or whatever, and people should focus on improving themselves, and we got to address some of these big issues. Both those things can be true, and it's a bit weird to me that Peterson is so dedicated to pushing this idea that we need to make it so, like, we cannot blame anyone but ourselves. It's empowering, but it's also strange, right? I have a lot of problems with that. Anyways, that's the end of the talk for today. I will say that was a little more scattered than I like. I think I got all my thoughts out. I wish I did it in actual order instead of just freeballing it, but hey, it happened, and I hope you got something out of it. If people have things to say about this, or if like I could totally do a part 2, but those are my general thoughts. I do want to end this off one more time with prefacing. If you are somebody who this has helped, more power to you. And if it's someone who you feel like it's still benefiting your life, keep doing what you're doing. But I think there's some core understandings that need to come along with this whole thing, you know? I think that's my main thesis. If I want to put a nice ribbon on it and just like give my thoughts in the self-improvement space, it's good if it works for you. You need to do it with the understanding that not every individual improving their lives will improve the rest of society's lives, because some of our issues are bigger than just our own routines each day. And saying that everything around us is perfect and we're all the issue is great to make yourself feel better about the things that you have control of in your life, but it's unproductive when it comes around to looking at everything else that you don't have control of and ignoring it. Because when you ignore the rest of the world, you're forced to be affected by it in ways that you don't want to be, you know, and then you won't be able to recognize it. You're just in a whole conundrum. But there's my elevator pitch on my thoughts on self-improvement. For now that that's over, I don't know why I got so serious towards the end of that. You guys know the drill. Go check out the painting over on the Instagram. Didn't come out exactly as I envisioned it. I layered the paint on too thick, but overall, not bad. More or less, it came out like cool. So I'm cool with today's painting. Definitely a little. I don't like how it's 1 foot in, 1 foot out, but I would say it's better than yesterday's, and that's what matters, right? Self-improving my paintings, if you will. But yeah, go check this out over on the Instagram. And until tomorrow, go to the gym, read. You know, you got to work on yourself. So.